Good afternoon, everyone. We have more clicker operations to perform, so get your clicker ready. I'm an art historian, as Dan says, but I'm also, along with my husband, who was also teaching at Stanford, he's a historian of technology and science. The two of us really are museum junkies. And for the last 25, 30 years, we've gone to museums all over the world, watching how museums morph into new paradigms, and the way in which they sort of brand themselves as this kind of a museum versus another. So could we have my question up? This is going to be a standard question for 6 images that I'm going to show you. The question is, what cultural institution presented this exhibition? And we're not going to, as we have just been doing, give you the results until you've voted for all 6. You got it straight? I'm going to show you a picture that is a fragment of a museum exhibition, a piece of a museum exhibition, and you are going to guess or feel knowledgeably sure it's either a fashion museum image, an image from a private art gallery, a science museum, a fine arts museum, or a history museum. All right? So 5 answers. This is a little bit more than I think we've had to play with up until now. And the first image is, thank you, and you can now vote. Second image, those are motorcycles. This one may be a little tough to read, but what you see are mannequins with a variety of garments, 2 different images from the same exhibition. Next one. So this may be a little hard. There are 3 different images, but basically people, viewers, are trying to move from one space to another in the exhibition, and they have to go through this very narrow channel of 2 women without any clothes on. Okay, the next one. In this part of the world, the subject should be easily recognized. Everybody, I gather, in Arizona has a pair of these in your closet. And the last one, a photograph, a page from a magazine, and a piece of clothing. Okay, we got it all down? All right. How many got the Metropolitan Museum of Art? That is a museum of fine arts for number 1. Let's look at the results. All right, that's pretty good. The majority. We had a few for fashion, a few for private gallery, but D was the fine arts museums. Now I'm going to reveal something so we can speed this up a little bit. Believe it or not, every one of those slides that I showed you took place in an art museum, a fine arts museum. So D, if you wanted accuracy as opposed to speculation, D would have been the answer. How many did D all 6 times? Ooh, a couple of heroes, but boy, 3, not so many. That's good, because that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what has happened to art museums where you see things that are a little different than what we just saw, which was a gallery of American art, what's called the New American Wing at the Metropolitan Museum that opened up a year ago. That is in the tradition of showing you great works of art from the American past, and they're usually paintings, drawings, watercolors, sculptures, but not the kind of thing, let's go to the next picture, that I showed you in the other slides. So all of these should have challenged you to think of as belonging to the art museum as traditionally defined. This is an exhibition called The Art of the Motorcycle, and it was done in this museum that looks like a brain. It seems to be becoming a theme of this afternoon. And in fact, the Guggenheim Museum in this year of 1998, that is 15 years ago, really shocked the art world and ordinary kind of art lovers to think that the Guggenheim, that sacred temple to the fine arts, was making a form of transportation, a motorcycle, a work of art. And many art people felt the Guggenheim had gone over the deep end. In fact, their attendance rose 45%. Many people had never been in the Guggenheim before this exhibition was done. Many New Yorkers had never been in there, and they were having enrollments of something like 4,000 a day, 5,000 on a weekend, and it was one of the most successful shows that the Guggenheim ever mounted. The slides I've shown you, that's the cover of the catalog, are actually because it went around the world. There were Guggenheims around the world. It's hard to photograph what it looked like in the Brain building, but it was much easier to photograph in the Las Vegas Guggenheim at that particular time, which is the images that I showed you. So technology, science, what did we have for answers? I'm guessing maybe that we were very high, yes, on a private art gallery. No, we were higher yet on a science museum and a history museum. But look how low D was. Very, very helpful to me. I'm not surprised in the least because you too are not yet used to the fact of thinking of an art museum as a place where you would go to see the design of motor vehicles. All right, next one. The third one was the Alexander McQueen exhibition in the fashion, held by the fashion curators at the Metropolitan Museum of Art a couple of years ago. You might have read about it. Alexander McQueen was a British designer, very theatrical in his runway shows and in his individual designs. The exhibition had been in the planning when he suddenly took his own life. So it became a kind of memorial show to Alexander McQueen, and it brought in a brand new audience, primarily a youth audience, and it was so popular that the Metropolitan Museum opened 24 hours around the clock the last 2 or 3 days of the exhibition so that they could actually show it to, in timed entrances, people right around the clock. It was a fabulously successful exhibition and put fashion on the map, though many other museums have done a variety of fashion shows, but this was one of the most successful and the most publicized, the most criticized, the most prevalent the most newsworthy of all the fashion shows of recent years. Let's see what we did here. Fashion museum, high, high, high. Who can name a fashion museum? There aren't many. There's one at FIT, there's one at Bard. Both of those are New York institutions. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London is very well known for its fashion shows, but that's only one of the many things that they show. So in a way, I had to make up fashion museum, hoping you might say that, so that I could be provocative in showing you a fashion show that's in a fine arts museum. Next. Gotta move along here. Oh, this one perhaps really stumped you. Before, well, no, I'll lose my pictures if I don't say a word. This was at the Museum of Modern Art a couple of years ago. It was by a living artist having her first retrospective. Her name is Maria Abranovitz, and because it did in fact have nudity, it had to have all kinds of notices that people might be offended or would want to leave now before they went into the exhibition. So that's what the big notice is about. But she is an artist who often is pushing you into situations that make you kind of question your own sense of propriety, your own sense of your own body. She uses nudity a lot in what we call performance art. She is a performance artist, and she herself in the exhibition performed by sitting in the chair, that is the artist right there in that red robe, for 7 hours a day at the Museum of Modern Art. She confronted anyone who would come up and sit in front of her, eyeball her, and there'd be no words spoken. It would be nothing but eye contact, and it became a kind of endurance for her because she would go on without breaks until the end of the day. So quite an extraordinary exhibition, and it was a first to introduce nudity in such, I thought many of you might say private gallery. Let's see what our answers are, because you often see this kind of thing in a private gallery. Well, by golly, I got it right. Many of you did think of it that way. So let's move on. Cowboy boots. Are we up to cowboy boots yet? Yes, indeed. The Great Cowboy Show in New Mexico Museum of Art, which was just a couple of years ago. And this was an interesting exhibition. Unfortunately, I only know it from the book, which is called Soul Mates by Joe Traugott, who has a great punster. And he showed boots, he showed the way they were made and crafted. He showed them in art, in posters, in illustrations, in pop culture. It was a multimedia spectacular about the boot and how exquisitely it can be fashioned and made, and how differently the range of designs that you can have in boots. Lastly, let's see how we voted here. Oh, we voted, it looks like we're kind of between 2% for fashion, and a number of you for history. I think history is a very close crossover, if you will. And that is, crossover is really the word that I will make a part of our discussions in the seminar. Many of these art exhibitions are crossing over into what we think of as theater, performance. I went to Philadelphia. There was a Merce Cunningham dance performance happening in the middle of an exhibition. We now have films popularly made, and we are having, if we could do the last slide, we are also seeing more and more of clothes and fashions. So this is the exhibition that is not yet materialized. 2015 is the exhibition I'm curating. It's going to be on Georgia O'Keeffe and her clothes. Believe it or not, we have about 40 years of her clothes. She did not throw things away, like many of us in the room probably. And her closets came with her two homes. Nobody's ever looked at these analytically and asked what they might teach us or make us think about in the life of a living artist. So my seminar will focus on this particular exhibition, but it will be under the rubric, what is happening to our museums, our art museums, and what are they morphing into, and what will happen to those traditional boundaries that we've always thought were so particularized and special to a particular kind of museum. Thanks.